For this video, we're going to have a quick discussion on graphing linear inequalities. Graphing linear inequalities is some pretty neat stuff, and I think it's also not that confusing if you get the tricks down at the very beginning. Graphing linear inequalities is exactly like graphing linear functions, which is cool because all you're doing is graphing lines, and the only thing we're trying to figure out is what side of the line do we shade on or not. And then the other thing that we're going to want to worry about is if we have this sort of inequality, what that means is we're going to have a dashed line as we draw, and then if we have a greater than or less than or equal inequality, then what we're going to have is a solid line. So this is kind of like how we have an open circle and a closed circle. Okay, let's walk through a couple two problems. All right, so what we're going to do is just solve this equation y equals, or y is less than 1/2 x plus 1. Well, what I'm going to do first is find my y-intercept, and my y-intercept is 1. And then, because that's this number right there. And then after that, I'm going to work on my slope, and that's this number, right? Because we're still going to use that y equals mx plus b format. So my slope is 1/2. Well, let's graph this here. Y-intercept at 1, and then I'm going to go up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, and then that should give me a line that looks about like that, okay? Since we have this inequality right here, we can't have a solid line, but what we can do is we can have a dashed line. So let's make ourselves some dashed lines here. I'm just going to use my eraser and go through and dash it. Now that we have the line graphed, we need to figure out if there are other solutions than just the points on the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a point that is not on the line at all. In this case, I'm going to pick this point right there at my origin, and that point is going to be 0, 0. So this is like the test run that I'm going to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 0 is less than 1/2 times 0 plus 1. So I just use this equation up here, and I plop 0 into each of the spots. Alright, well, let's do the math here. 0 is less than 0 plus 1, so 0 is less than 1. Is that true? Yes, that's true. Alright, so we know this point is good. Let's do another point just to see if we're doing the right track. Let's look at this point right here, and that point is going to be 4, 0. Okay, so I'm going to plug in 4 and 0 into my equation. So we'll have 0 is less than 1/2 times 4 plus 1. Okay, 0 is less than 2 plus 1. 0 is less than 3. That's also true. What that means is I can more or less take my, let's see here, I can take my chisel pen, I can take my eraser, or marker, and I think I can make this whole area in here shaded. All the points that are on this side of the line are going to be true. I could pick any point I wanted, and it would be true. Alright, let's do one more for practice. Alright, so now what we're going to do is graph 2x plus 3y is greater than or equal to 6 using intercepts. Okay, so we're going to have to kind of walk back memory lane with the math that we were doing yesterday. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve for when x equals 0. Oops, let's make this black. So I'm going to solve for when x equals 0 and when y equals 0. Alright, so that means I'm going to say 2 times 0 plus 3y is greater than or equal to 6. Well, that goes away, so I know that y is going to be greater than or equal to 2. Well, let's make our point over here, y 2. Alright, there's the first one. And then let's check with y part. So I'm going to say now 2x plus 3 times 0 is greater than or equal to 6. Okay, so this part goes away, and then that means that x is greater than or equal to 3. Alright, so there's that point right there. And then I'm going to connect the dots. So this is exactly the same thing as if we were doing just a regular old graphing. I'm going to draw myself some arrows there. What I want to do now is I want to check to see which side, if there's shading on this side, or if there's shading on this side of the equation. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to look for a point that is not on the line. In this case, let's look at an easy one. Let's use 0, 0. Okay, so I'm going to go back into this equation. I'm going to say 2 times 0 plus 3 times 0 is greater than or equal to 6. Well, this is 0 plus 0 is greater than or equal to 6. And that's just not true. So, not true. That means that nothing over here on this side is going to be true. So let's stick a frowny face over there, and we're not going to do any illustrations or lines shading on this side. But what that also tells us is we can rule things out, and we know that since the bottom half is no good, then we can shade the top half. And that's what our sketch will look like. So let's erase these. There's none of those. It's only on the upper half. And then the only other thing we need to do is check our line style to make sure that we match. Remember, let's get a different pen here. Recall that these inequalities is a dashed line, and this type of inequality is a solid line. So it looks like our solid line here is good to go.